I forgot. Airline what?
I'm looking for David Hood because he is supposed to give our invocation. And I did send him a email earlier. He said he was going to join us. So let's give him a minute or two and maybe he'll come on.
Yeah. So they can see. Oh, you're on. No. Oh, no, I hadn't had this problem before.
Hello, Floyd Lucas.
There you go.
See this, Floyd? Maybe you can't hear me.
Oh, Floyd
How
Lucas.
close he is to the mic.
Hey, Lou,
If I'm not here, ask my wife where the ashes are. Hi, beautiful.
Hey, Wes.
Not you, David.
That was your question. Lived in Wellington and Plattsburgh. Then started having kids when we started shooting.
Catherine has arrived.
there, David Hood has come on board.
Say he has or he hasn't?
He has. He just popped in.
Okay. Okay, David, you're with us this morning? Good.
I'm here for a little while. I'm still in my mediation on my other device. So
I see. Okay. Well, good luck. Those mediations on via Zoom are a little different than the way we used to do it, isn't it?
True.
Okay. Well, we'll call this meeting to order. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on Zoom. And our invocation this morning is going to be given by David Hood. David, please go ahead.
All right, let us pray. Lord, we are so thankful to have a beautiful day and a wonderful opportunity to fellowship and to meet together. We are so thankful for all the many blessings that we have received. And we ask for your intervention in the lives of all of those whom we know are in need of help. We ask for inspiration to be your hands and your feet in this world as we minister to all of those in need. We ask for your blessing on our club, on our community, on our county, on our state, and on our nation. And ask for your guidance as we seek to do good in this world in these strange times. Bless our meeting, bless our shared goals and shared experiences and shared activities. And may it all be a benefit, and may you be proud of the results. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, David. And David Leonetti, can you put the American flag up for us?
Yes, give me 1 second to share my screen.
Whenever you can. If you will, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag States of America,
States of America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Indivisible.
Justice for all.
Thank you, David. Okay, a couple of quick announcements. I think most of you have gotten the notification about our wine testing, which is going to be the 29th of this month. All you've got to do is sign up. The deadline for signing up is the 20th. And David Leonetti and others are going to distribute the wine, and then we will be talking about the wines as we sip them, coming from the people who are providing the wine. Also, we've got some really good programs lined up for you. I think this one today will be especially interesting, and I want to remind everybody that next week we have Dale Falwell, the Treasurer of North Carolina. He's going to talk to us about what COVID-19 is doing to the finances of our fair state. In the meantime, then, David Haas, I know you're with us. If you would like to introduce your speaker, I would invite you to do so.
You're still muted, Dave.
Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Glad to have my good friend Wes Parlier with us today. Wes and I met at South Caldwell. He's a Granite boy and I'm a Hudson guy. He has worked really hard in his career. I'll take a second to tell you what he's done. I graduated from Guilford Tech, 2 degrees, career pilot and aviation management, those 2 degrees. Worked line service 4 years while learning to fly, fueling and servicing corporate, private, and commercial airplanes. To build his time, he flew traffic watch and other odd flying jobs. His first paying job was night freight for DHL. Flying, I remember when he was doing it, flying from Wilmington to Fayetteville to Raleigh to Cincinnati and back 5 nights a week. Pretty rough. $8,700 a year.
For $8,700 a year, he just told me. I'm actually here at his place. Our network's down at work. So I'm at Wes's house. He did that for a year and a half. Then he flew 7 years up in Plattsburgh, New York, a 19-passenger turboprop. He did that all across the Northeast. And then in 97, he was hired by United, and he's still there. He's moved up the ranks. He does mostly international flights now. It sounds glamorous. It sounds wonderful. I'll ask him where he's been. He'll say, oh, I've been to Lisbon or Amsterdam. And then I'll say, what's going on? He says, I'm going to bed. I've been up 36 hours. So it's it's tough, but it sounds glamorous, but it's a tough gig. He's an interesting guy. He's a terrific chef. He rides and works on motorcycles. He knows his music. He has restored for you pilots out there, he has it up at the Lower Creek Airport. He has restored a 1941 Stearman biplane. It's a World War II trainer. I've been up there to see it. He wants me to get in it. I'm scared to do it, but he flies people around. So over Hickory. He's very generous with his time and volunteering for the City of Hickory and the Air Museum. He spends a lot of time there restoring the planes, and on his own dime, he'll fly places to look at things that they're considering purchasing. So he's a generous guy. In fact, this morning, I'm going to have him tell you what he was doing this morning. He was up before dawn doing something for the museum. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wes. Please have some questions for him. He's going to talk a little bit, but let's have time for Q&A. Here's Wes Parlier.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
I don't know how to start this, but I'll just
Tell him what you were doing this morning.
We have a couple of cockpits. We have a F-18 cockpit, literally from the whole nose forward, and we put this on a trailer, and we take it around to like Oktoberfest or Veterans Affairs, and the cockpit opens. It's complete jet inside, and you can climb in and look at it. We're just trying to promote aviation and veterans and aviation history. So we had a trailer that was feeble and it needed to be taken care of. So we took it down to Richard Tucker. I'm sure some of you guys know Richard Tucker, Carolina Fabricators, and he strengthened up the trailer for us so we can take it around to again promote the museum and promote the City of Hickory. So yeah, we have fun with it. It's a limited crowd that does all this because it's painful and it's hard work, but it's fun. I love my hometown, so I'm doing the best I can to promote it. You guys want to hear about United Airlines as far as what's transpired with the COVID thing. Before COVID, United's fleet plans were to have, by the end of this year, 828 airplanes in our fleet, which is massive. We had 4,900 flights a day to 362 airports across 6 continents. I've told David a couple times about our fuel. Fuel is our biggest expense because you're burning like 2,000 gallons a minute, 24 hours a day. Up until this point, planned retirements, where we have a required retirement age of 65 years old. And all these guys are aging out now. So every airline, every major airline is typically losing around 500 pilots per year. And so with the crash that happened in Buffalo, New York, they made more stringent requirements for being a captain or flying for the airlines. And so couple that with retirements, and there was a huge pilot shortage. I mean, massive. They didn't know how they were going to fix it or how to fix it because there's just not enough qualified pilots to go to the airlines. And then COVID hit. So that kind of screwed everything up, obviously. As far as what's going on with my airline, and it's typical of American, Delta, Southwest, all that. Total revenue, including cargo, is down 85% right now. International passengers are down 85%. Third quarter ended with $25 million a day in cash burn. So that's what we're losing every day. And we're one of the best ones right now. At one point, it was $50 million a day. And we've gotten that beat down to 25 million a day. The majority of that has come from increasing our freight flights. So we've been able to fly medical supplies and equipment and people to reposition them for the COVID deal. And that has brought it down, like I said, to 25 million a day. That's $2.3 billion in 3 months that we've lost. And we're at the top tier. Prior to July 4th of this year, we had a modest booking rise of passengers. So the way we work is everybody books a flight and they either show up for it or they don't. And if they don't show up for it, then you've got to figure out a formula for how many people are not going to show up for the bookings that you have. And then you got to try to figure out how many airplanes are we going to try to fly to compensate for that error in bookings versus cancellations. Obviously, the objective is to fill every seat in the airplane and as many seats as you can. And if people are booking flights and then not showing up for them, then that kind of creates havoc with your planning, your fleet planning, your scheduling. And it's a tremendous, I can't comprehend what I see as far as what the company does, as far as arranging airplanes. And you don't want to put a 777 that holds 350 people on a segment that is only going to fly 75 people. So you've got to adjust your fleet plans for your airplanes, because we have Airbuses, 3 different types of Airbuses, 4 different types of 737s, 2 different types of 757s, 3 different types of 767s, 3 different types of 777s, and 3 different types of 787s. So you got these people that are looking at all this and they try to figure out where to put these airplanes and how to carry put the most freight and or passengers on these airplanes to maximize revenue. So we've parked a ton of airplanes because some of them just aren't efficient. You're not going to make money on them. You're going to lose a ton of money. So this is where we depend on management to do fleet planning and manpower planning. And I have a hard enough time flying the airplanes, much less doing this kind of work. So it's beyond me how they do it. Let's see. Right now, we're expected to fly 40% of last year's revenue as far as passengers go. After outbreaks, bookings deteriorated, and now we've gone down to where we don't know what's happening right now. United announced that they were going to furlough, and I'm talking specifically for the pilots, not the flight attendants or anybody else. They announced an involuntary furlough of 2,250 pilots starting October 1st. Now, because we received money from the government for the CARES Act, they can't involuntary furlough until October 1st. So right now they're saying the initial furlough is going to be 2,250 pilots. Because the bookings have not picked up, now they've readjusted that to 3,900 pilots are going to be furloughed, or 1/3 of our pilot force. Expectations are demand to be 50% or less until a vaccine is developed, mass produced, and available before any of that picks up. So to even get back to 50% of demand has to increase by 4 times what it is right now. So this is what they battle. You know, I'm glad I'm not in that program, because all I do is just fly airplanes, thank God, because you wouldn't want me doing any of these other math projects. We have programs to reduce expenses, which is enhanced company offered leave of absence, where they don't pay you. It's called they have empty line is what when you get your schedule for the month, it's called a line. Hey, what did you get for your line for this month? And that line just encompasses what your trips are. And so they're offering what's called an empty line, where you get paid 0 hours, and then it's your responsibility to go into any open flying that may be available. You pick up those trips and you get paid a specific amount for those trips. So you can fly as little or as much as you want, or get paid as little or as much as you want. They also offered what's it called? Surplus relief line. That's what I'm doing right now. So that means I took a 30% pay cut to stay at home and not fly at all until November 1st. And also, I don't get paid in the month of October. So that's to alleviate cost concerns for pilots, and I'm trying to alleviate any furloughs. So I do everything that I can to furloughing pilots, because when you furlough pilots, it's just cost everybody money, and it's a huge stressor on families and relationships, and it's horrible. So I can live with a 30% pay cut. I don't know how long I can do that, but I'm trying, just so we don't have to furlough anybody else. Total salary and benefits are the biggest cash expense for United in the third quarter, and pilots account for 40% of that. Just recently, in the last couple of days, they've decided that they're going to resume 30 international routes in September, which is 37% of last year's international schedule, which is ridiculous. And they're going to resume 40% of domestic. And this is what they're planning now, but that doesn't mean anything, because again, it goes back to the thing that if everybody's reserving seats and buying seats on the airplane, and then they cancel their reservation, well, United's already said we're going to fly whatever, a 767 on this route. 70% of those people that had reservations on the flight cancel, then you're still flying an empty 767 to Europe, and that's expensive. So right now they're projecting to do 37% of last year's international schedule, 40% of last year's domestic schedule, and like I said, not to meet demand, but to give people the option is what they're doing. And that's cost prohibitive. It's like saying, yeah, you're going to have 6 round trips a day to Newark, and then only 12 people show up. Well, you're not going to do those 12 flights or 6 flights a day. You're going to chop it down to 1 flight and maybe put a bigger airplane to fill it up. Like I said, we have pilot bases in San Fran, LA, Denver, Houston, Chicago, Newark, and Washington, with 6 fleet types of airplanes. So you've got to figure out how many people want to fly on the airplanes and what airplane to put on that route. And it's, needless to say, complicated. So that's what I'm dealing with. Like I said, I'm way better off sitting at home flying my Stearman with a pay cut rather than having to commute to Newark to go to work, because that's where I'm based. And to get to Newark right now, I have to take 2 airplanes and either go through Dulles, Chicago, or wherever. And it's just, I can't do it. It's very stressful. So anyway, that's where I'm at. You guys got any questions? I'll be glad to answer them.
I'll ask the first one right quick, Wes. You've mentioned, I've heard you say when they park a plane, it goes to the desert. What, all the planes that are getting parked, what does that mean?
Well, when you park an airplane and for an extended amount of time, those you have like a 1 week parking time, 2-week parking time, 4-week parking time, and then what they call extended retirement or whatever. So an airplane needs to be run just like your car to stay efficient and to keep running properly. So when you shut down an airplane for a week, you have a certain checklist that you're doing for that airplane, which is pretty elementary.
Jennifer Reynolds is calling.
To shut an airplane down for 6 months, then you really have to drain all the fluids. You have to put protective fluids back in it to keep it properly lubricated. You have to protect the tires. You have to protect the windshields. You have to protect all kinds of stuff in the airplane. So it's very complicated. And again, it goes back to those same fleet plan managers that say, all right, this fleet is going to be parked for this long time, so we're going to commit to putting this type of preservation into it, or we're going to perhaps pull them out 2 weeks early. And we have been pulling airplanes out of the desert early, but now that has stopped. But now they're saying it's going to go back to pulling more out in September because they're adding 25,000 flights. And it's all dependent on what's going on with the COVID thing, because the more outbreaks they are, the less bookings you see, or the more people that are enthusiastic about going to Europe, they buy their ticket, and then 2 weeks beforehand they say, no, we're not going to go because it's too chancy. So it's a very fluid environment.
Where in the desert do they see it?
The places in the desert that they park the airplanes is most of the places we're using are Roswell, New Mexico. What's the place in California? There's 2 places, Mojave, California, and there's another one I can't think of right now, but they use the dry arid desert because it's the least deteriorating to the airplane when it's sitting and not flying. You get less dry rot, you get less precipitation, so it's better on the machine. But as you know, with your car, your motorcycle, or your airplane, they run better when you run them continuously rather than letting them sit. When they sit, they don't do good. They break down a lot. And then that creates cancellations and creates heartache with the passengers that are like, hey, I was wanting to go to Disneyland. Now United sucks, or American sucks because the plane broke down. And it's just not reality. It's just the way it is with machines. And if you have any internal combustion engine in your life, you understand how that works. So any questions you guys might have, I'll be glad to lie to you or fabricate some answer.
One quick one, has United retired all of the 747s?
Yeah, the 747 is gone, which was sinful. I hated it because I love that airplane and I never got to fly it. I could have flown it, but I didn't, and now it's gone. But yeah, they're all gone.
Well, then is the 787 about the most efficient one you have now?
Absolutely, by far the most efficient. And we have 3 versions of that airplane: the 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the 10 is made for a short hauler, relatively short haul speaking, and it holds the most. The 787-8 is the most efficient for long haul stuff. And so that's why my airplane, I fly the 757 and the 767, and the 767-400 is the most least efficient airplane in our fleet. So they parked those. They haven't retired it, but they've parked them. They're not going to fly them again for a very long time. Just the seating arrangement in them is very inefficient for social distancing. So they really had to, it doesn't make sense to fly that airplane. But the 787-8 is exceptional for us right now. It is the mule that's carrying us right now.
Did United buy any of the 737 Maxes?
Oh yeah, we have a ton of those. We were like the second biggest customer, I think, besides Southwest and possibly American. Yes, so and that is a very efficient airplane. And it's coming back. It's coming back probably by the end of the year. That's what I'm hearing. But who knows? That's all a FAA, government, Boeing thing, and plus a union thing. And that's like 3 different political parties trying to get together and agree on something. And we know how that works.
Amen to that. Seeming like our Congress, it won't be the end of the year. It might not ever be. Well, tell me one more question, and then I'll let someone else ask you. When they bring a plane out of the desert and want to put it back in service,
right?
What does it cost them to get that airplane reconditioned and ready to go and make sure it's 100% safe?
Well, when they shut it down, that's the purpose of the shutdown checklist of what they're trying to do and the period of time that they anticipate that airplane being shut down. And that varies according to, like I said, the time span of how long they think it's going to be. I can't give you a number on that, but obviously those number guys have gone through all that and they figured out the best way to do that. Like I said, if it's a long-term thing, they're going to drain all the hydraulic fluid. They're going to drain all the oil out of it. They're going to drain all the fuel out of it, and then put a preservative in there. So if United said, hey, I need all the 757s out of the desert right now, it would probably be a 2 week spool up to get those planes flying again.
Right.
It's a very arduous process. So to make the call to shut the airplane down for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or long term, it's not a quick turnaround to say, hey man, we need this plane tomorrow. That ain't happening.
I understand.
Wes, this is Jeff Mackey. Thanks for sharing your time today.
You're welcome.
If I want to go, say, to Paris next summer, am I best off to buy a ticket now or wait till these 40% flights increase in September, or wait until 6 months before? I know you're not in that into the business, but
That's I would hate to even give you any advice on that because I'll be wrong. It's just, there's no way to tell because you don't know what the COVID's going to do, and you don't know what for the traffic to come back. And if the traffic comes back, if we get a vaccine, and I don't know if I said that or not, but expectations are for demand to be 50% or less until a vaccine is developed, mass produced, and available. So until that happens, it's a dicey situation, but if you can get a ticket now and it's cheap, then buy it. There's no ramifications of that because if the flight cancels, then you can move it. But if you're making reservation plans for the south of France, as far as the house goes or anything like that, well, that might not happen either because France is locked down. So it's an arduous process. I don't, when my wife and I go on vacations, I usually buy tickets because I don't want to deal with the non-revenue travel thing. So I understand what you're going through, but I have no insight to that at all because it's so fluid and it changes daily.
Okay, and a second question, what's being done to address the pilot shortage that's coming in a few years? And what do you have to go through to become a pilot?
Well, that too has been thrown into a weird flux because of the COVID thing. Whereas we were struggling to hire pilots, qualified pilots, to fulfill all these retirements and fleet plans. Like I said, by the end of the year this year, we were supposed to have 828 airplanes. And you can consider, I don't remember what the math was, but it's usually 10 to 12 crews per airplane in your fleet. So at the high point, we were at 13,000 pilots and we were hiring quite a few a month. And then also extrapolate that we're retiring 500 pilots per year. And that dramatic, we were retiring too many people for what our plans were. So they had to come up with these ingenuitive schemes, which they're 3 years behind in our union and everybody else's union that try to tell them that, hey man, the doo-doo's going to hit the fan and you're going to have airplanes with nobody to fly them. As far as training goes, the military and civilian over the past 10 years probably was 50-50 as far as hiring goes. But the military was losing so many pilots, and the airplanes are getting so expensive. F-35, F-22s, all that stuff. They're expensive, and so you just, before, as a military pilot, Air Force or Navy or whatever, you signed up for typically a 7-year stint. Well, they've got so much money invested in you now that they can't justify letting you go after 7 years. So they either up the requirement to stick around or they give you exorbitant bonuses to stay in. And so the military pool is not dried up, but it's reduced to where 75% of the hiring is coming from the civilian ranks. And if you don't have qualified civilians to fly the airplane because experience, then you're retiring 500 pilots per year per airline, then it's just a catch-22. So they've come up with some ab initio, is what the old term was, where they hire a guy at a very young age, and they put you through flight training, and you are given jobs predicated on your flight time, and you're guaranteed a job at KLM. All right, you start at KLM, but you start out, they train you to fly from 0 time all the way up to the minimum requirements to get hired by them to fly as an airline pilot. And there's a catch-22 with that as well, because you get 2 young people that have very minimum experience, and bad things happen, and bad things are going to happen. So it's you got to pay for the experience. And I hate to say that term but I've got 20,000 hours, and as bad as I am, I'd rather have me in the cockpit than somebody with 500 hours.
I'd like to thank you as well for your presentation. I love to travel. I love to fly, with one exception. Can you talk about clear air turbulence, what it is, and how you detect it, and what happens when you hit it?
All right, clear air turbulence is, and it's amazing in the past 5 years what has happened to transform this event, because before we depended on, I'm flying behind a guy 50 miles in front of me, and he gives a pilot report, and he says, hey, I'm at 39,000 feet, and I just ran into moderate to severe turbulence, and so you predicate, hey, well, I'm either going to go higher or lower. But over the past 5 years, we've got what's called an electronic flight bag, and there's these applications that are on the iPad that uses every airplane, is logged into this database, and the iPad itself actually has accelerometers in it, and it can judge how bad the turbulence is, and then it creates this, in addition to other numerous meteorological people, they determine what on your flight path is the best altitudes to fly at, because it gets horribly inefficient going over the North Atlantic when everybody's trying to change altitudes. And you've got, if you look at the video of the map at night with the transatlantic flights going from Europe, or from North America to Europe, and then later on the next day from Europe to North America, they set up what's called a track system, which is a highway system basically. And it's usually about 6 to 8 what they call tracks, and they're labeled, and they have available altitudes. And then you have what's Shannon in Ireland and Gander in Canada. They get together and they try to determine what the turbulence predictions are over the North Atlantic. And then they program these routes into the system predicated on what the anticipated turbulence is going to be. And then they file these routes, these highways. And so when you're like, we'll get in the airplane and the dispatcher will say, all right, you're planned on Nat Track Alpha tonight, which is the farthest north route. They go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, going eastbound, and then opposite going other way. But everybody's talking to each other now, which is great. There's a great transmission of information between the airlines and air traffic control to try to mitigate, because that's one of our biggest threats is turbulence, unknown turbulence, like you said, clear air turbulence. And it's very hard to predict. It's extremely hard to predict, but we've had so many different procedural changes over the past few months or the past few years to try to mitigate that, because that's where most passenger injuries come from. That's where most crew injuries come from, is from unknown turbulence. So the iPad has helped a lot. Technology has helped a lot. The airplanes have ADS-B, and which is all these tracking systems that are used. The airplane communicates to people and ATC that we don't even know about. So we can have things that if we have an engine anomaly or mechanical problem with the airplane will transmit that information to our maintenance department. And sometimes they know about the problem before we do. If something goes in and out of parameters. It's an amazing system, but as far as your clear air turbulence, and it's still weather, which means it's completely dynamic and we have no control over it and we have no way of truly forecasting it. So it's kind of a touch and feel thing. Everybody goes from whoever's in the front and say, hey, I'm having this problem at this altitude, and then so everybody else chooses a different altitude, and then you got all these meteorologists and dispatchers involved. It's quite complicated procedure. But like I said, they've been really hard on us the past 2 to 3 years about injury, turbulence mitigation, keeping the flight attendants from being injured and keeping passengers from being injured. And it's quite
Thank you.
No, you're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
You're welcome.
How are the airlines handling passengers seating and any procedures now with the COVID-19 things?
Yeah, you know, and what's weird about that is it's changed dramatically too, because they want to put they're a business. So they want to put as many butts in the seats as they possibly can. But still trying to adhere to procedures that mitigate exposure risk. So like for us, we have temperature checks at least twice before we are even allowed on the airplane. The requirement of masks. So they're putting, but they've also decided that they're going to fill every seat, because you're not going to make money if you don't fill every seat. Flying a half empty or a third empty airplane is not going to make any money. So over the
can I ask you a question? Because
Sure.
that kind of related to the other question. Do you have an opinion about how safe it is to actually be a passenger, like in the airport, because I know a lot of people cancel their flights because they're feeling anxious about going through the airport or actually the time on the plane. You know, how do you have an opinion about that, your own safety and the safety of the passengers with the, the same air circulating, and temperature checks? Really, they don't tell you anything, really, because people can be positive and you never know.
Absolutely. And that's a gamble that you have to take. You can do every precaution that you can possibly take, other than short of taking a blood test before you get on the airplane and saying, that's it. You know, the airlines are in the business of making money, and they can't keep flying empty airplanes, or you're not going to have any air travel. So it's a very complicated thing. And as far as passengers concerned, well, I'm concerned as well. That's why I took a voluntary leave of absence, so I don't have to go deal with that. It's not that I'm afraid of it. I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's stressful to go to work. It's stressful to go to work, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I have 2 autoimmune diseases, so for me, it's a risk for me to go to work. So I understand. I have the same concerns that passengers have. But,
Wes,
yes.
this is Catherine Newton. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to change the subject a little bit. I want to hear about these F-18 cockpits you're putting together in the museum. I'm hoping in another life I can be a Navy pilot flying an F-18 somewhere.
Well,
not likely.
I would like that myself. Okay, so let me tell you, I'm involved with the Hickory Aviation Museum, which was started by my friends and David's friends, actually, from South Caldwell or Hudson, Kyle and Craig Kirby. They had a vision 30 years ago, maybe. They found an airplane sitting in a field in Taylorsville, and they somehow finagled the Army to do a practice exercise, and they picked that airplane up and they took it to the Hickory Airport. That's how that museum started. And since then, Craig Kirby has been in charge. He has been in touch with so many people and made so many contacts between the air shows and military people that they all know him now. So without divulging too much stuff, there's a certain gentleman who he is employed by the US government to destroy airplanes for the government. When the government gets tired of these airplanes and they don't want to keep them in the inventory anymore, and they know that they're never going to fly again, they commission a civilian to come in and chop the airplanes up. That means that they're never again for any service for any country, no matter what. And there's occasions where there's portions of these airplanes which can be preserved, and this gentleman calls his commander or his boss and says, hey, my buddies at the Hickory Aviation Museum would like to use this piece, and they donate it to us. If it's a portion of an airplane, a piece of an airplane, then that's no longer considered government property. Now, if we get a whole airplane donated from like the Air Force or the Navy or the Marines, that property is always considered United States government property. So a lot of the airplanes out at the airport, even though they're 50 and 60 years old, they're still considered United States government property. The F-105, the F-4, all those airplanes are still considered government property. So we can't alter them. We can't really do anything with them. But as far as the stuff that's been torn up, the F-18 cockpit, the F-14 cockpit, those are all our property. And then we mount them on a trailer, and then we take them around to veterans events, like I said, and air shows or whatever, and show them. The F-18, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I've been trying to get a ride in the F-18 since I was about 17 years old. So it ain't happening for either one of us, I promise. Unless somebody buys one, which they're going to come up for sale for civilian sale, probably in the next couple of years. So if you're a billionaire, then you can probably buy one, and we'll go fly around, I promise.
Thank you. I'll go right along with you.
You're welcome. That was a great question, yes.
One technical question. Do all the commercial airliners have ABS in and out now?
We don't have in, but that's coming. That's coming. We have so much stuff I can't even. Wide area augmentations at WAAS. We have ADSB out. They can tell exactly what we're doing. The FAA can tell, and our company can tell. So it's going to get to the point where our controllers or our dispatchers sitting in Chicago, which is an amazing facility, they're going to be able to look at us, and they're going to be able to say, I need you to slow down. I need you to speed up. They're going to start sequencing airplanes for ATC. It's going to get crazy. And it's almost, I'm an old school guy, so I don't like all that stuff. But it's coming. It's coming. Yeah, we do have ADSB. They've got all, I can't remember all the acronyms, dude. I'm full of acronyms. But yeah, we all have ADSB. We just don't have it in. And that's coming just because the airplanes are so old. The airplane that I fly is 757, 767, and I think the newest one I fly is 1985 or something like that. They're very old airplanes. And it costs money to put all that equipment in them.
Oh, you got that right. I'm a general aviation pilot, and of course it's coming to general aviation too.
Oh, yeah.
But they're talking about delaying the final requirement for 12 months now because of just the COVID-19 and everything being so screwed.
Right.
But ultimately, the goal is that every airplane in the air will have it, and it's particularly, I think, useful for general aviation. It'll do more for general aviation than commercial aviation.
Yeah, that's you're quite possibly right. You know, I have a Stearman. I don't want any of that stuff on my airplane.
Do you even have a radio in it?
I do have radio, but I don't like using it. So that's why I fly up towards the mountains and I stay 1,000 feet off the ground and I just buzz around. I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing. You know, it's it's prohibitive. It's cost prohibitive to put it in an airplane like that because I don't do anything with it. It's like a Cub, you know, to put $2,000 to $5,000 piece of machinery in an airplane could possibly only cost $5,000. They're going to destroy general aviation, and I'm a big GA guy, so that I don't want to see anything that prohibits people learning to fly. That's what I use the Stearman for, is because kids today they don't care about it. They like their Xbox. I've been enamored with airplanes since I was 2 years old. The first time I saw an airplane, I'm like, I need to do that the rest of my life, and I'm fortunate enough to do that. But there's kids just don't feel that way anymore. They don't grow up building model airplanes. They don't grow up flying radio controlled stuff. It's a sad state. And I'm afraid that portion of GA is going to disappear. So do you rent or do you fly or do you own, or what do you fly?
No, I did own. I sold my company some years ago, and the airplane went with it. And then unfortunately, not too long after that, I had open heart surgery, so I'm struggling to get my medical back.
Yep, I've gone through some medical problems myself. So I understand. I lost my medical at the beginning of the year for 6 weeks. So, yep, and they can take your livelihood away instantly.
I swear, after dealing with them, I think it'd be easier just to build an airplane than it would be to get a medical from them out sometimes.
You come to Lower Creek and I'll take you flying in the Stearman. I'll let you fly it all you want. David's afraid of it. He won't even touch it. He's afraid he's going to die if he touches it, I think. But yeah, you come up to Lower Creek and I'll take you flying in the Stearman and you'll have a good time.
I take you up on that.
Is that for anybody? Because
absolutely, no, absolutely. I've had the airplane for 10 months and I've given 87 rides so far. So I'm all about everybody getting up in the air, because your life changes when you're up there. In the open cockpit biplane, you forget about every bullshit that's going on in life. You're like, this is the coolest thing ever. It is amazing adventure. I highly recommend it, and I'll be glad to take any of y'all flying.
Hey, Wes.
Yes,
How
sir.
can we recognize that plane from the ground? Just so we can wave.
It's blue and yellow biplane with a big giant 828 on the side. Trust me, I've already gotten 4 calls from the FAA over the past few months, so you're good. I buzz all the time. Well, buzz is a bad word to use. I fly all the time. So I fly over Morganton, Lenore, Hickory. I just love looking down in my hometown from the air. It's amazing. And I take people for rides, and they want to see it as well. Everybody wants to see their house from the airplane. Everybody, it's just an amazing spiritual adventure. I promise you. I'll live in that hangar before I'd sell that airplane.
I understand. Well, thank you, Wes, for a really interesting program. We really appreciate it. Are there any other questions from anyone? Okay, well, please accept our thank you. We appreciate your being with us today and filling.
Thank you.
That was great. I'd love to come up and take you up on that.
Well, David knows how to get a hold of me. He knows where the airplane is. You talk to him and I'll take you up.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I appreciate that. I'll do it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You need David back?
No, that's all right. We're through with David. He's done his job. He got you on for us. Anyway, as I said earlier, next week, Dale Falwell, the North Carolina Treasurer, will be our program, and our invocation will be from Coy Hudson. And for now, in conclusion, unless someone else has something, an announcement for the good of the club, we'll conclude with the 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial? Oh, thank you again.
Take care.
Everybody for showing up. See you next week.
Next week, everybody.